Hello, this is the Leonardo MD-80, or Mad Dog as it's known. It's another of the study level aircraft that have been released this weekend for Flight Simulator. It's been an expensive weekend. So if we have a look inside the aircraft, everything works. And that's quite scary. So I have got the aircraft up and running already, otherwise this video would be considerably longer. So what we're going to do this evening is just fly a manual circuit around Stansted Airport north of London in the UK, just to see how it flies. We will use some basic autopilot modes along the way, but the general idea here is just to go and fly. We're not going to program a flight plan in. We can have a quick look at the flight computer over there. There's a tablet in the cockpit, so you can pull things up like an operational flight plan for SimBrief integration, that kind of thing. There's various things you can get to the aircraft performance calculators and stuff like that. The kinds of things you would have on a tablet within a cockpit. So this plane is interesting because it kind of straddles the old world and the new. So you can see elements of the old world in kind of the switchgear around the aircraft. But then you can also see elements of the digital world creeping in. So if we go and click on the bottom of the yoke to move it out of the way, when we click on this display here, we can move it through several modes. And you can see it's saying fail everywhere because we haven't configured anything. But we're just going to fly by hand tonight. So to aid us in doing so, you will see on this panel here, which is for the autopilot configuration, you can see it's just in takeoff mode, which is absolutely fine. So just to fly our route that we're going to do, to explain how it works, we will use the master control panel for the autopilot a little bit, but we're really just going to concentrate on flying the aircraft. Now the sim has just frozen on me, so well done Asobo, you still haven't fixed that. That's been ever since update 5 that the sim randomly freezes. We'll wait for it, can be anything from 20 or 30 seconds until it wakes up, but we'll just soldier on. There we go, it's just woken up and all the controls have suddenly moved, which that wasn't me. Anyway, we will use the master control panel for the autopilot, which is in its usual place in between the pilot and the co-pilot seats at the top of the console here. So you can see some familiar lettering on the buttons. So speed mode, nav mode, ILS, VOR mode for navigation. So the autopilot has got lots of different ways of navigating. Got VNav over there. We've got the flight director switches, which is very similar to the Boeing's. You've got auto throttle arming here. Again, very similar to a Boeing. But we're not going to use most of it this evening. We're just going to fly it around on a circuit and see how we get on. We can set altitudes in the same way that you normally would. So you've got altitude over here. So we could say we wanted to go for 3,000 feet during our test. We can arm that so it goes to alt as soon as we've done that. So it's going to try and get to that altitude, but we want to get there via a vertical speed maybe. So we can click over here on vert speed instead of VS as it would be on a more modern airliner, and we can roll the wheel. So you can kind of see the elements of the modern MCPs or master control panels that are starting to appear on these old aircraft. So let's go for climbing out at 2,500 feet per minute. So we'll leave that alone. And where we have already done that, if we look here, this tells us about the mode the autopilot's in. So it's going to go for altitude. It's using vertical speed to get there. And we're going to be in heading mode for the actual steering the aircraft. So to see heading mode, we can press this to do heading mode. Yep. So you can see heading select appears here, and then you can roll the wheel. So we're going to take off on runway 22, which I think is 222 degrees within the sim. So we'll just roll this backwards towards 222 degrees. Let's just check that on the map. So yeah, 222 degrees. I just checked the wind. Yeah, we've got almost no wind over Stansted, so it's not going to matter which runway we use, to be honest. Okay, so let's go and try this out. So if you'll notice down here, there's a great big plunger on top of the tiller that says parking brake, pull to engage. So if we push it down, we have disengaged the parking brake. So now when we edge the throttle forward, we should start rolling. Now you'll notice it's very, very quiet. And there's a very good reason for that. We are at the far end of the aircraft from the engines. So we're up here, engines are right back here. So the MD-80 is famous for being very quiet in the cockpit. All you can really hear are the air circulation systems. Okay, so we're going to taxi round. You will notice, looking at the tarmac, the lights are already on, or the concrete I should say, on the ground. So just edge the throttle forwards to push us along. I'm going to taxi out to runway 22 at Stansted Airport and go and take off. So I actually really prefer these old aircraft over the newer ones. I much prefer gauges and buttons and switches and knobs to the glass cockpits. I mean, okay, yes, the Airbus is wonderful in that, you know, you can almost fly it without being involved. But these older aircraft, you actually really need to be on your game. So we're just going to make sure we've got alt mode configured. We did arm alt mode by pulling that, didn't we? Yes, we did. So we're going to climb out to 3,000 feet at 2,500 feet a minute. So we're going to move the flaps to takeoff position on the way out. It's a bit of a maze to get to the runway at Stansted, but I need quite a long run with this aircraft. It's a big heavy lump, and it doesn't accelerate that quickly. It's only got two engines. But it is very streamlined and it's very fast. This will outperform in a straight line an A320 or a 737. It's not quite as fast as a 747, but it's almost up there with it. Unfortunately, it belches an awful lot of pollution out of the back end of the aircraft as well, which is half the reason you don't see them around anymore, because modern aircraft are much more environmentally well, they cause less pollution, let's put it that way. Okay, so we haven't programmed a flight plan, so we're not going to worry too much about that. Okay, let's center the view up and open the engines. Again, notice how quiet it is. Outside it's anything but. Okay, we're getting towards the rotate speed, which is about 145-ish. And rotate, we're airborne. Gear up. And flaps up.
Gear up, lights out. Traffic.
We're getting an TCAS warning. Now the reason the engine gauges are flashing is because I had it on absolutely max throttle. But we're going to pull it back now. Coming up to 200 knots. So we were now going to turn on the autopilot. And we'll get that climb out automatically now to 3,000 feet. Coming up through 1,900 feet at the moment. Actually, I didn't correct the barometric pressure before we took off, did I? But it looks like it's fairly accurate anyway. So I'm going to give it a bit more throttle. We're just staying above 200 knots at the moment and accelerating. So coming up to 2,400 feet. Okay, so we're coming up for 3,000 feet. Aircraft is levelling out and accelerating, so we're pulling the throttle back gently. And now we're going to spin around and go in the opposite direction. So we're going to turn left until we get to, if we have a look at the diagram here, so we're flying out pretty much on the plan we told it. We're being pushed sideways by the wind slightly. But we want to go back on a direction of 42 degrees. So let's move that so we can see it. So all we need to do is twist the heading knob around to 42. So we'll do that. We can actually change the bank angle that the aircraft's allowed to use to do that. So all we're doing here is moving this heading knob around until we get to 42 degrees. And you will notice if we zoom right in on this, there's the underneath of the heading knob, there is a bank angle setting, so you can control the amount of bank angle. So we're just edging up on 250 knots, so I'm going to pull the throttles back to control that. And we just had a USB bug from the simulator there. I don't know if anybody else has noticed this, but as of several versions ago on Flight Simulator, now and again you get a recycle of the controls, and it causes all of the controls to jitter for about a tenth of a second. Okay, so let's have a look at this aircraft from outside. What's the volume level like, by the way? I'm recording it. Okay, I can turn this way up, can't I? Because you can't actually hear it at the moment. Okay, that's better. So, there we go, the MD-80. So as I said, this is pretty much a study level aircraft. Or we forgot to turn off the landing lights. It's kind of an interesting aircraft because when you look around the cockpit, there's some really strange knobs and switches that, you know, there's no kind of uniform method to it. They've all got odd shapes. It's almost like, I heard somebody else say on another video, it's almost like they raided a parts bin to build the aircraft. But there are good reasons for doing this. If you've ever looked at a TV controller with all the buttons being different shapes, it's so you get that kind of muscle memory of what things feel like. So if you do have to operate in the dark, you can actually find the switches easily as well. Or if you're not looking where your hand is when you're reaching for a switch. But yeah, all of this works. It's study level to the last detail. All of these screens work and show you the things they should. You've got the warning panel up there, which will obviously light up with all manner of notifications. We've got the Boeing style flight management computer, or FMC. So you can come in here, and obviously I didn't program it before we took off. But you could go and put your origin and destination in. So we could say EGSS, for example. Will it allow us to do it? It will allow us to do it in midair. Obviously, rekeying the origin on a Boeing resets the route, which it has just done. So we'll say we're going back into EGSS, thank you very much. And then we could go back and say execute that. I think there's Control 2 will give us a nice view of that. Yeah, it does. So we could then say, look at the departure and arrival. We could program that arrival and say we're going to come back into runway 22 on the ILS. We're not going to use a star, so then we could come back into the route and activate it, and that will probably have put a discontinuity in. Let's just have a look through. No, it hasn't. That's interesting. So if we go down here now and have a look at this, It'll be interesting to see what this is drawing. Yeah, it doesn't like it because we haven't programmed it properly, but I'm not going to get into that today. We're just doing this simple route. I'm almost buying time talking about that until we get back up to the other end of the ILS feathers. So we're just flying along just under 250 knots, quite happy. So we'll turn around, we'll get the VOR radio working. So you can, at the moment you can see it saying VOR failed, so we'll get that programmed in along the way. There's various different screens you can see here. So this is the one we really want for what we're doing. So let's go and tune in the radio to 110.50 with a course of 223. 110.50. So you should see this come to life, and it just has. And a course of 223, which is the direction of the runway. So you can see the CDI is rotating as we do that. So this isn't like the glass cockpits where it tunes the course for you. You have to do it yourself. So there we go. So we're going exactly the opposite direction of the runway, and the runway is to the left of us, which is absolutely correct. It's to the left of us, the centre line. You can also now see the glide slope marker has appeared as well. We're about in the right place vertically right now to begin the descent, but we'll fly out a little way further before we make our turn. Okay, so let's just have a look. So if we actually, can we see the airport behind us? It should be back. Oh, it's over there, look. So by the time we make our turn, we should be hopefully somewhere near in line with the airfield, which will be really cool. You can see it's early evening in the United Kingdom as we do this test of the MD-80. Okay, so we spin ourselves around. So we want to go back to 222 degrees now. So we're going to start the aircraft turning, spin it round. So this is basically like we're operating almost like the selected mode in the Airbus. 222 degrees we have chosen. There's all sorts of odd, strange things in the MD-80. For example, these little mirrors that flip up, they're not actually implemented in this simulated aircraft yet, but I imagine they will at some point. When you flip that mirror up, you'll notice there is no binnacle compass on the post in the middle of the cockpit. For some reason on the MD-80, the compasses are up in these little boxes up on the wall. So what they did is made a little mirror that the co-pilot and the pilot can flip up, so they can see the compass on the wall behind them, and the compass is actually printed backwards so they can read it through the mirror. There's other things as well. You'll notice looking around the top of there's a rail around the top of the cockpit. So they have actually implemented this to a fashion in here, that this is on the rail, but in the real aircraft you can obviously move that around the rail. Okay, so we're heading back towards the airfield now. So let's go and turn off the autopilot over here. We can see we're just on the glide slope now, so I'm going to cut the throttles. So autopilot is disengaged. You can see we are off to the right of the glide slope, so we will turn. Just move the view around. You can see the runway out there in the mist, but we can see here on the CDI we are to the left of the glide slope. Did I say right earlier? We're to the left of the localizer, sorry, and we're just coming in. We're slowing down as well. We can use the air brakes to slow down a bit more.
2500.
Okay, so we'll start extending the flaps. Okay, here comes the centre line. We're going to overshoot it, but that's fine. Actually, it gives me an opportunity to explain what's going on. Like, we've crossed over the centre line, so we're off to the right now. Yeah, you can see that happening. So we're going to put the landing gear down now. Notice the roll rate on the MD-80 is glacial. It is very, very slow. So extending the flaps a bit more, keeping an eye on the ILS, so we're on the glide slope, we're almost on the localizer now. Just flying in by hand. Need to straighten up now. Remember we had that slight crosswind?
1,000.
Obviously we don't get any of those lovely glass cockpit wind notifications in this aircraft. So we're just going to open the throttles up a bit now. Go for full flaps.
Traffic, traffic.
So a bit high. So I'm just correcting that.
500. 400.
Back on plan.
300.
Now we're going a bit low. That's because we're going slow.
200. 100. 50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
Okay, you kind of slammed that down into the ground, but not the best landing ever. Get back on the centre line. Go for reverses on the engines. And reverses off and use the wheel brakes. And we can take the high-speed exit on the left. We didn't switch the landing lights on, did we? Oh well. But functionally, you can see this aircraft's really cool. We're getting all kinds of warnings going off because I'm obviously not following the script here at all. So if we were to what's it warning us about? It's warning us about the landing gear, but the gear's down. Anyway, you can see there's obviously a lot to learn with these older aircraft. Some of the systems can be frustrating, let's put it that way. Ah. Oh, we're going head on with something big in front of us, so we'll get off the taxiway in front of him. Get onto the... Is this the Beta taxiway? I can't remember the designations at Stansted. Why did this get so busy this evening? Anyway, functionally you can see there's a lot that I haven't done, so that's why the cockpit's kind of having a fit with me. It's warning us about auto land, which we didn't ask for. It's rather interesting that it's asking for all these different things. If we turn the flight directors off, I wonder if that will help. No, it's still complaining like mad about the altitude and the gear and the flaps, even though none of them are selected. I don't know why. Obviously there's several hundred pages worth of technical guides about this aircraft. Should we get out of this guy's way before he runs straight into us? Go and park up over here. So you can see, functionally, it was quite easy to understand this aircraft, but from an operational standpoint, there's a lot to learn. So I was doing a lot of things wrong. Should we go and park next to this Boeing 247 that's parked up on the concrete over here? parking brakes on. So back inside the cockpit. You can see this. You can see at study level. Just look at all the different levers and switches and things. It's very, very good. Yeah, I'm not going to mess around with it too much. I'm trying to get to these switches, I can't reach it to cut the engines. It won't let me. There's obviously... Oh, there we go. You have to use the mouse wheel to do that. So we just cut the engines. And the airplane's gone cold and dark, which is not the way to shut it down. But you can see we've got all sorts of warnings now have come up on the display. So yeah, I am the worst nightmare of the flight test school, you could say. There's somebody else going out for a takeoff. So there you go, it's the MD-80 and there's a lot to learn. It's a very big, very complicated aircraft. It's very heavy, it's very fast. And it's kind of a throwback to this is how aviation got to where it is today. Is, you know, these aircraft once ruled the skies. And it's available for Flight Simulator now, and I won't deny it's study level. There are no easy routes in with it. You can change the aircraft state to automatically load in, you know, ready to take off, for example, but the actual configuration of all the systems and the operation of them during the flight is very involved. But it is close enough to the real thing that you can use the real instruction books for the aircraft, and everything in them applies to it and works. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there. That's the MD-80. It's one of the most expensive aircraft for the flight sim so far. It might be the most expensive, but it's probably the most involved and the most accurate so far. So if you really want to cause yourself some pain, the MD-80 isn't, you know, you couldn't go far wrong with it. So there you go. I'm going to stop recording there. I hope you enjoyed having a quick look at it and my ineptitude on landing and the alarms going off. So there we go. I'm going to stop recording there. Take care. See you soon.